when the original automobile hit public roads, there was no DOT, there was no NHTSA, there was no ability to regulate that space on the front end. And so here, do you guys believe that autonomous vehicle regulations are needed? And if so, why or why not?
Yeah, I think what we're going to see, what I've been predicting, and I also write a column called the AI Insider column for AI Trends, is in the next 3 years we're going to see a tremendous amount of lawsuits. You may have seen just 2 weeks ago the lawsuit against Tesla for their Autopilot 2.0 with various claims about that in terms of its supposedly being drunken in its behavior. We've been very lucky so far. The way I look at this space with self-driving cars, it's almost like an Uber kind of thing right now. No regulator really wants to attack it because it's got that glow to it of something very exciting in the future. But my prediction is, in the next 18 months, unfortunately, we're going to see some circumstances with self-driving cars where they get into a terrible accident, and the regulators are going to realize they're going to have to step in. So I'm predicting that we're going to see a lot of regulation stepping into this area that right now is very light.
So from my perspective, the train has left the station in terms of regulations. So in 2017 alone, we've had more than 20 states actually start having autonomous vehicle legislation being discussed in this very early stage. And several states already have in place autonomous vehicle regulations. So I think it's 5 states have had it before 2017. The state of Michigan has been added in this last year, and it is currently being actively debated in many different legislatures. Our strong preference, of course, is that cars, by its very nature, pass state lines, right? So from California to Nevada, Nevada to Arizona, etc. And so what really makes sense is actually a national framework, such as the US DOT NHTSA model, because of the very nature, even not just a passenger vehicle, but when we get to the discussion of trucking, that becomes an interstate commerce issue. So what we look at right now is the NHTSA guidelines that have come out, I think are very, very good. I think very good standard that's been set, but we do have to recognize that there are states actively moving towards regulation, and even some cities actively looking towards regulation. And that, I think, is going to be potentially very problematic, because what you don't want is to go from Palo Alto to Mountain View and have to switch cars, right? So that's something that we definitely have to think about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think kind of 2 thoughts. One is I really hope that there's good regulation put in place before an accident, because I think if there isn't, then you are going to see regulators, lawmakers racing to introduce bills that are going to set the industry back, and that's really problematic and something that I think none of us here want to see. But I also think that I look at it from the perspective of everybody here is probably an early adopter. Early adopter of technology, but there's still the 90% of society that isn't, and they need to have some confidence that the technology is safe, or else that's also going to kind of set up hurdles to the deployment of the technology. So I think regulation has a role in giving society the confidence that the technology is safe and that people can use it. It's just that obviously we want to make sure that the regulation is going and doesn't stall the innovation. So it's a fine line that I think California got off on the wrong foot on initially, and I think the current draft of DMV regulations is much better than earlier versions, but it's also taken 2.5 or 3 years longer than they planned, which is